Well, welcome to our free webinar, Less is More SEO for Seasoned Food Bloggers. So all of you here, it sounds like are ready to do this. You're seasoned food bloggers. We are so honored to have Arsen Rabinovich. Did I say it right?
Yep.
Rabinovich?
It's been years.
No,
I'm hoping that you got it.
that's what I'm saying. Like 10 years later, and I still struggle with names for everybody. So we had this conversation with Haley about Janicek or Janicek, and she does Janicek, but her husband says Janicek, which we thought was hilarious.
Isn't seg
Um,
the right way to say it?
yeah, she says it's Janicek.
Awesome.
So yes. Hi, Amy. Love hearing from you guys in the comments. So Arsen is the founder and CEO of TopHatRank with us today to educate all of you on the always changing and very important topic of SEO. And we hope that you walk away with fresh insights and things to implement that you haven't previously considered. Arsen, thanks so much for being here. We're so excited to have you, and we'll turn the screen over to you momentarily and let you get started with what is sure to be an amazing presentation.
Crossing my fingers.
Oh, I did want to say one thing before I turn it over. Just a quick little housekeeping. We will be publishing this recording as a Replay and Tastemaker collaborative, so please double check your Zoom settings and make sure that you're all muted at all times, except for Arsen. If you're not okay with being on camera in our recordings, be sure to keep your camera off too. If anyone has questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will circle back to them in the last 10 minutes of the webinar if Arsen is unable to answer them in real time. So thanks everyone again. And Arsen, the floor is yours.
Awesome. I'm going to try to figure out how to share my screen. I probably should have practiced that earlier. Here we go. And I'm going to share this one. Okay. I'm going to do the typical, tell me if you see my screen.
We see it looks good.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Arsen. I blame my parents for my last name. I'm the founder of Top Hat Rank. We are an award-winning SEO team. Most of you should have met us by now. Probably should update that picture. I'm also a panelist and founder of the SEO for Bloggers webinar. We now have Top Hat Chats as a part of this series where I speak to individual brilliant people about SEO and digital marketing and all in the sphere of content creation and bloggers. Here we go. Hang on. We're excited to get started. I'm never getting rid of the slide. I've been using it since 2017. I love it. My favorite. Okay. How simplifying your content helps you rank in 2025. As the title states, this is for seasoned bloggers. And the reason we stated it this way is a lot of you have a lot of content, and a lot of that content is slowly aging. And when I say it's aging, it's slowly not passing the quality tests from Google from a topic satisfaction, intent matching, user satisfaction perspective, and what Google wants to see now. So stuff that worked 5 years ago, because we do have a new search engine now, and there's a whole new ranking system since August of 2024, and we had the helpful content system that came out. And this new way of scoring content and ranking content is just so new and so unique, and it's so quick. We have to change our understanding and how we function in the space of SEO. So stuff that worked 5 years ago might not be working now. And what I'm going to be talking about today is how to align your strategy with what Google wants to see. And here it's not really rocket science, and it's not really SEO, because we're not going to be talking about internal links. We're not going to be talking about core web vitals or backlinks or schema. We're going to be talking about topic focusing, content focusing, getting rid of redundancy, and just making your content more human from a perspective of what Google wants to see, and less SEO'd. So many of your best performing posts from years past have aged out of their traffic driving positions. Many older posts are long. We were taught to write longer content. But now they lack specific focus, which Google looks for. There's a lot of repetition, a lot of filler content that either you did on purpose because you wanted to include more keywords, or you were taught to do it this way, or you were being inspired. I don't want to say copying. You were being inspired by other bloggers, and you were looking at, and I'm responsible for that too, because I used to coach and say, hey, you got to look at what's happening in the top 10 positions and be inspired by that. And you still kind of do, but it just became such a repetitive process that once you got comfortable with writing in a certain way, in a certain structure for the same queries, same type of queries, it just became a process. It has a lot of tangents and a lot of subtopics that just dilute away from what the user is there for. And just content hasn't been updated. People haven't been somebody's drawing on it. My attention span. People haven't been auditing their content or keeping up with the new practices. So it's just been aging there and sitting there, and it just drags down rankings for those specific posts. And if it happens on a larger scale, it's going to start dragging down the entire website. And we see examples of that very frequently. So what is Google actually looking for? The expectations have evolved, and so must our strategies. Google favors content that quickly satisfies search intent. So the user is here for XYZ. We want to make sure we give that to the user. And we've kind of been preaching that for a very long time. The helpful content update is essentially people first content, because Google wants to make sure that the content that's being produced is helpful, the content that puts the user's needs first, not searching out optimization tricks and keyword stuffing. And we've seen the evolution of that since the September 2023 update, and every single iteration of that update, more and more of the SEO practices that used to work are just no longer working. And on top of that, if Google is seeing that that's something that you're doing consistently across all posts, it's going to start classifying the entire website. Google wants to see clear purpose, topical focus, and user-centered writing. Your content should stay on topic, serve the query, and guide the user through a experience. I'm here to learn this, give me this, effectively predict what else I need to know now that I've learned this, and help me get to that direction. On some of these slides, I've included links to sources for this information so you can expand and read more. And I'm sure you've already noticed this. I've included some pro tips. And again, I'm not teaching you specific SEO. You can go into ChatGPT and you can upload a piece of content or link to your piece of content, and you can ask, does this post stay focused on one user intent, or does it veer into unrelated topics? This works. This really, really does work. And it's so simple. You can take a longer post, you can throw it in there, and it's going to tell you. Still, it's a tool. You have to take what it tells you with a grain of salt and still apply critical thinking. Okay, moving on. You want to simplify to amplify. If the post tries to do too much, it often ends up doing nothing well. Simplifying your content necessarily is not shortening it. It's focusing it. You're not removing length. You're removing distraction. You're cutting down on the noise. You let each post serve one focused specific purpose. Each post should be focused around one clear user intent. And we're not talking necessarily search intent. This is not sort of like informational commercial. When we say user intent, why is the user there? What are they here for? Trying to cover too many subtopics and needs at once weakens the authority, the topical focus of that post. Remove repetition, tangents, and unrelated FAQs. Trim anything that doesn't help someone achieve why they're there. Here's another ChatGPT prompt that you can use with your content. I'm going to show you a case study. This is gluten-free on the shoestring. We worked together on this. She came to us. She dropped out of her traffic driving positions for big chunks of her content on her website, and it wasn't deep drops. They were just drops out of traffic driving positions. You can see here, this red line is page 2 position, so 10 through 20, and you can see where she dropped off around the March update. And then what we've been doing with this post. This post was updated in April. And this is top 3 positions, just showing you how the post expanded once we started applying these principles. And I'm showing you this one example. I have more and more and more and more to show you. You can even do this on your own. You can search for, and I do this in my coaching, you can search for braised chicken. You'll see the #1 result. look at that result. It's going to be a completely different post than what you're used to seeing from a recipe blog. Search for my favorite term, potato soup recipe. Look at the first 3 results. It's going to be a completely different post structure. This is signaling to you. You're noticing a resurgence of reoccurrence of all recipes in search results. Sometimes we're seeing 2 results from all recipes on one search result page. And that's because of how clean and how short and how focused their content is. I'm going to show you here how we simplified this post and we got it back into top 3 positions. We removed a lot of filler, removed content dilution, we refined the structure of the post, and we showed the power of intentional content here, really taking the user from why they're there and guiding them through a process from top to bottom. The original post, and I'll show you what the structure for that post had the recipe right, but the structure was all over the place. There was redundant recipe steps repeated in the body and the recipe card. Covered too many angles, egg-free, almond flour, trying to address every variation in the post. They eluded it away from the main focus. Weak heading structure and unrelated FAQ, scattered H2s, questions, reduced scannability, and diluted topic was all over the place. Right? Some more chat GPT prompts. I'm also going to have a slide at the end that has all of them. I just wanted to throw them in as they're relevant. Here is the before for this post. I don't know if everyone can see. You can zoom in later if you want to. Here is the after. We cut 2,000 words of content off of this post. We cut 2 more posts out of this post, basically. 2,000 words of content. Old posts had a lot of topical focus dilution. When we actually analyzed this, extensive discussion of ingredients and substitutions, especially for non-essentials. These substitutions added heavily worded adjacent but distinct topics like egg-free bread, gum-free recipes, and dairy-free swaps, even though they're somewhat relevant to the topic. Because there was so much content around them, it was pulling the content contextually away from the primary focus of gluten-free bread recipe. Overlong introductory storytelling. I know we've been fighting on this, and still fight you guys if we need it. It's too long. It's excessive storytelling. It pushes content, the core content, the reason why the user is there, the actual recipe, further down on the page. This delays user satisfaction, but also weakens the page's immediate relevance to the query, closer to the top. Give the user what the user wants to see at the top. There was very heavy broad coverage of techniques. When a single page attempts to act as a hub for multiple techniques, it loses its identity and focus. Gluten-free bread recipe. Google may then favor pages with tighter topical focus. And then there was very much in-depth FAQs that addressed non-core topics, right? And again, it expanded the topical scope beyond the original intent. It diluted away from the recipe. The old post also had really poor document outline, issues with heading and hierarchy. There were lack of cohesion in the flow, intros, tangents, tips. It was just like scattered all over the place. You're more than welcome to take a look. Mixed intent signals. It pulled the reader in different directions. It had baking theory, a personal narrative, a general gluten-free advice. The structure signaled to Google that the post was covering multiple loosely related topics rather than answering that one user query. I want a recipe for gluten-free bread. The recipe itself, the reason the user is here, that button that we have at the top of the post that says jump to recipe, from a structure and organization perspective, it was buried. It was delayed. The reason why the user is there, gluten-free bread recipe, is all the way at the bottom. There was a lot of stuff that was unnecessary for the user to know before they got to the recipe. We'll talk about the recipe card again in a little bit. Let's talk about filler content. This is so important because I've been cleaning this up with multiple bloggers over and over and over again, and we're just seeing the posts grow. The more filler we remove, the better. Over-explaining basic steps, that's padding. If your content restates obvious details, it's wasting attention and reduces user satisfaction. Remember, content length is not a ranking factor. Repeating ingredient lists can be seen as filler. It is being seen as filler. There's really no need for you to repeat the ingredients to have the ingredients in the recipe card and then repeat them again in the body of the post. Tangents that don't serve search intent are hurting rankings. Every section should reinforce the reason why the user is there. Your primary topic, your H1 on the page, your H1 up here, is gluten-free bread recipe. Every H2 and H3 should be a subtopic of that primary topic. You should not move in different directions with that. And again, too much setup before the recipe. Slow delivery. The filler content that we dealt with on this post, long-winded introduction and narrative, we talked about this. Some storytelling can contribute to EAT, and we'll talk about what you should be doing with storytelling a little bit later. Repetitive content around technique. There's really no need to repeat the technique twice, 3 times. Non-core FAQs and use cases. Several FAQs covered unrelated edge cases, like what if I want to turn this into cinnamon raisin bread? If they wanted to do that, they would have searched for gluten-free cinnamon raisin bread. When you start doing this, when you try to fill this and give as much as you want, and I understand it might be coming from a good place, what you're doing is you're diluting. You're hurting the post right now. Google's stance on filler. According to Google's guidance, and it's echoed here in the Search Engine Journal post that I linked from the bottom, and Chanda said that everyone will get a copy of this, so you guys can actually click. Content that exists just to add length or to stuff in keywords. Text that repeats or over-explains obvious things. Overuse of personal stories or tangents unrelated to the page's purpose. The old port structure had all 3 of these. From a manual rater's perspective, this would reduce the page quality rating because it delays satisfaction of user intent. It makes it harder to extract the main value of the page, and it appears unfocused or overly broad. What made this rank? So this is the new structure now. Titles and headings and titles heading structure, clear H2 and H3 outlines. Yes, Google will understand if you don't get them properly, and that's fine. You don't need to have H3s, you can do H2s. Google will understand them. But for people who are visually impaired, people who use screen readers, even for large language models like Perplexity, for ChatGPT, this helps understand the page. So if you do want your content to start getting picked up, which you should want to, you need to make sure that you have clear, useful structure. We focused on one variation of the bread. We cut out everything that was diluting away from it. Instead of covering 5 gluten-free bread types, we zeroed in on one clear recipe. And we removed as much filler and really just covered the benefit and the unique perspective. And we added that value above them. What we did here is we got rid of a lot of redundancy. Google views redundancy very similar to filler. The rater guidelines flag repetition and redundancy, pages that add length without value or marked lower quality by manual evaluators. Redundant content is low value or filler. It's very similar. Repeating the same idea twice confuses both readers. And this is, again, coming from the recipe card. Think of the recipe card as not a separate entity in your post. Don't think of it as a sidebar. I know you fill it out in a different part of your website, but the recipe card has an H2. If you remove all the prettiness from your post and you look at the part of your post, which is the recipe card, you remove that line, you remove all of that little, print the recipe and all those buttons, it's going to look exactly like a part of your page. It has a heading. Your H2 on the recipe card should most likely say the word recipe in there because that's where the actual recipe is. You're telling the user to jump to this recipe from the top. That's your call to action. You're calling the user to look at the recipe and make the recipe from the recipe card. You should look at your recipe card and ask yourself this question. Is this recipe card filled out enough for the user, for the reader, to make this dish, to make this bread, the way I intended them to make this bread, without having to read anything above or below this recipe card? And if your answer is yes, then you don't need to repeat that information anywhere in the post. You've covered that part of the post. You've covered the recipe. Everything else above the recipe card and below the recipe card should be your unique perspective, your unique perspective around the ingredients, your unique perspective around the preparation method. Anything that you want to tell from like you don't have fresh blueberries, you can use frozen ones, all of that. But there's really no reason to repeat it. It wastes crawl budget and interferes with indexing. Google will look at the page, looks at the whole page, and looks at it from a blog's perspective because it wants to understand those sections. Those sections are jump to sections from AI overviews or from other parts that Google, other places where Google pulls this information into. So you want to have one place for that one specific subtopic. You don't want it repeating across multiples. Here's a source on all of this. You can use this. Are there any blocks of content in this post that repeat ideas, weaken clarity, and they dilute main topic focus? Put this into ChatGPT with a link to your post and see what it says. Don't do it now. What you should be doing. I know it's very content heavy. My slides are heavy these days. I have a lot to put in here. It's really simple. It's not rocket science. And for you who have been doing this for a while, who really understand your content and understand your industry and have been optimizing, you know more than enough to be able to quickly, and this is easy to execute on. You're literally just going from top to bottom of your post and you're asking yourself questions. You want to audit your declining post. Start with pages that lost rankings or traffic, rankings and traffic should be, but are still in the top 20 positions. If you're in the top 20, this is Arson's little theory. If you're in the top 20 positions, that means your content is still relevant for that keyword. These are the posts that will respond the quickest. The gluten-free bread post responded quickly because it was still in top 20. It lost at traffic driving spots. It went to page 2, but it was still relevant. So we were able to focus it more and bring it back to the top 10 positions. Eliminate repeating sections and filler. We talked about this earlier. Anything that's in your recipe card should definitely not be repeated or even rewritten in different words above the recipe card or below the recipe card. Focus on one core topic and user intent. Don't do too much. You want to take a look at who's ranking in the top 10 positions, and you want to look at how they're covering the topic. Look at their document outline, read through their post. See, how many variations they're providing? Are they talking about it, making it gluten-free, making it dairy-free, making it in the oven versus in the pressure cooker, whatever it is. Use clear hierarchy with your headings. The user's here for the recipe. You want to give them that. Top of the post, here's the recipe. Here's some information from me on everything you need to know about the ingredients, the process, the substitutions from me as the expert, as the creator of this recipe. Now there's the recipe card. Here is where you make the recipe. Now that you learned everything you need to know before you make the recipe, here's the recipe card. And now that you've made the recipe, below the recipe card, if you choose to, I'm not saying you should, but logically, below the recipe card, now that I've made the recipe, what else do I need to know? What are the next steps? How to serve, how to store, how to freeze, how to throw it at your kids, whatever. Once you've made the recipe, what are the next steps? You can use ChatGPT. Here's my post. Can you suggest edits to remove repetition and streamline the structure? Right for the user. I know you're tired of hearing us say this, right? Right for the user. We truly mean it this time. There's no like we're not drinking Kool-Aid from Google, right? But think like Google. Modern content optimization is about providing a unique perspective, satisfying the query and matching intent. That's all. Don't overthink it. Unique perspective. The reader and Google, but primarily the reader, can get this recipe anywhere else. The potato soup recipe is going to be pretty much the same recipe from everyone with minor variations. What's the unique perspective? Google has said this time and time again. We don't want to show the same recipe from 10 different sites, rewritten in different words. And if you notice, they are now talking more about unique perspective instead of unique content. Because unique perspective is just that. If you know something about the braising technique for this braised chicken, focus above the fold on that because that's unique and that's a perspective that's relevant to the recipe. And teach them how to properly braise before they get into braising the actual chicken. And you'll see that that post is #1 and hasn't moved from being #1 for braised chicken recipe since August of this year. All it does is it breaks it down into 2 sections. Above the recipe card is all about the braising technique, and then the recipe card. And that's it. That's the post. And it's #1 for braised chicken. Keep your intros sharp and informative. In my coaching, I teach to keep your intro to 2 paragraphs, very short and to the point. You can, if you have a story, you have some stuff to say, below the fold, below the recipe card. Keep it short, keep it concise. 2 paragraphs, 1 paragraph, 3 paragraph intro. The first thing the first paragraph should always be telling the user what they're about to get themselves into. This recipe will require X amount of ingredients. You talk about the preparation method, and then you can say it will make your kitchen smell great and wonderful, and everyone's going to want to name their grandkids after you. The next paragraph should establish expertise, why they should listen to you and not the other 9 recipes on that page, why they should follow this recipe. And it shouldn't be, I am an expert baker, right? It should be something that speaks to the recipe. It can be something along the lines, oh, I've been gluten-free for the last 5 years. I really hate the taste of store-bought gluten-free bread. I decided to perfect this recipe over the years. I've been making it over and over, and it tastes like real, actual bread. And that's enough. And then you can get into the actual recipe or providing information around what they need to know before they get. Avoid duplicating what's already in the recipe card. The body of the post should enhance the recipe. Provide unique perspective, not restate the steps and ingredients. Support scannability with structure. Use clear H2s and simple formatting, short paragraphs, to guide users through the post without overwhelming them with excessive bullets. I see a lot of bullets with no rhyme or reason other than it's easier for people to read. But if you actually look at the content that you're bulleting, those are not lists. It doesn't make sense to bullet those things. You're not listing things. Here's a pro tip here. Does the structure support fast and helpful scanning? Okay. Final thoughts on this. Clarity wins in 2025. Clear content is better rankings and happier reader. SEO is not about length or volume anymore. Search is evolving fast, and Google's ranking system rewards clarity, purpose, and user-centered writing. Always focus on user satisfaction. And that's the new ranking factor. Focus and user satisfaction. Content that effectively and clearly answers the user's query has the best chance of ranking. And we see this over and over. The more we tighten up, the more we clean it up, the better it gets. Helpful prompts for using ChatGPT with your content. Here they are. I don't know if you want to take a screenshot, but we use this stuff and it's really great. Obviously, again, grain of salt, but it does point you in the right direction. And we'll have this for you later. Some helpful links, sources for where I got the information for this presentation. We had Dr. Marie Haynes, I always mess up her last name, on Top Hat Chats. Here's the YouTube video. We talk about the updated quality raters guidelines. There's a lot of clarity, and it was about 2 months ago, but there's a lot of clarity in that conversation when it comes to this particular topic, especially for bloggers that have been doing this for a while, have a lot of content on their site that's just slowly aging. It's as simple as refocusing it when you update it. If you want to get better at stuff like this, we have our group SEO coaching. I'm doing a shameless promo here, Chandis. Group SEO
Great.
coaching. It's ongoing. It's I teach all this stuff. It's great. We have a lot of people signed up. We are building our cohorts right now. We like to put people together into groups. If you're interested, here is a link, QR code. Hopefully it's scannable. Fill out that form, get on the list. We'll get in touch with you once we have a group ready that can fit you. I am done, and that's my story.
Woo! All right, Arsen, we are going to rapid fire because there's a lot to cover. You did so much and gave us so much information that there's lots of questions. So we're going to try to do a rapid fire
Okay.
and not spend too much on each one.
Okay.
This is the first time I've heard of putting information below the recipe card in 13 years. Can you speak more to this?
Right. So, you want to experiment with this. Again, think about the recipe card as content on the page, right? If it wasn't a recipe card, if you just had a section, an H2 on your page that says uh, um, gluten-free bread recipe, right? That's the section of your post which has the recipe. And then it has a H3, instructions, and another H3, ingredients, another H3 instructions, and then all your notes and everything else. That's everything you need to make the recipe. That's what the user is there for. You want to prioritize that closer to the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that the user made the recipe, what else do they need to know? And that's the content that would go below the below the fold. If you look at potato soup recipe, you look at Pioneer Woman, they hover between position 2, position 3. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Should images be added to the recipe card with of the
Yes,
step-by-step?
100%.
They're perfect. And should they also be in the body of the post, the
Doesn't
step-by-step?
they don't need to. Okay, again, we start at the top. I landed on your page. Sorry, I'm excited. I landed on your page. The first thing I see is Arson, click this jump to recipe button. Arson is extremely ADHD. Arson has shiny object syndrome. Arson clicks that button. I am scroll down to the recipe. I'm here. I'm like, let's go. Let's make this recipe. Again, extremely ADHD, visual learner. I'm reading, I'm reading, I'm reading. I'm on step 3. I am royally confused. Instructions too difficult. I need an image. If the image is not there for me in the recipe card, what do I have to do? I'm scrolling up somewhere above the recipe card to find that step.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense.
Perfect. So better to keep the recipe, the step-by-steps in the card versus in the post because you don't want to repeat them, correct?
Now, yes, Arson, there are still posts that are ranking that still have ingredients and instructions for this gluten-free bread in the above the recipe card in the body of the post. Yes, true. And that's fine. If it's working for them, it's working for them. At one point, it will stop working for them, just like it stopped working for everybody else. What you want to do is you still want to have those sections in the body of that post. But instead of rewriting the same information that you have in the recipe card, use that section to provide a unique perspective around those ingredients
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or unique perspective around the baking technique or the preparation method.
Okay. So if you feel the need to continue to leave those images, just make sure it's coming from a different perspective so it's not completely repeated.
Right.
All right, great. So same thing, stop including the tips in the post if they're including them in the recipe card, correct?
Yep.
Okay, great. Um, Katie just said, wow, this is a huge pivot from what we've been told in recent months. So just wanted to put that out there.
Look, again, this is all up to you to experiment with. You have to.
Mhm.
I highly discourage everyone from going in just based on what I've presented to you today and saying we're gonna go and change all of our content, right? No, because each query should be treated differently. And if you've seen any of our content from SEO for bloggers or any of my webinars or anything that we talk about, each query should be approached individually. First thing you do is you put your primary keyword into Google and you see what Google is telling you it wants to see. And your job is to come as close to it while also providing a unique perspective.
Perfect. Is the recipe card more important than the rest of the post?
The focus of the post is the recipe.
Okay.
You should not need anything else. You should be able to publish just the recipe card and the user should be happy with what you have
Mhm.
there, right?
Wow.
But
Okay.
yes, the recipe card is the most important part of the post.
Perfect. Should there still be an ingredient image in the body of the post?
Process photography, ingredient shots are not ranking factors. I, again, encourage you to search.
No, no. Oh, the ingredient.
Right.
Sorry.
I encourage you to search braised chicken recipe. I encourage you to search potato soup recipe and look at the top 2 posts. It's not there.
Okay.
It's good for the
Perfect.
user. It is not your process photography, your flat lays, all of that is not a ranking factor. Google is still going to rank you if your content is good, even if you don't have process photography. Look at a lot of these sites that are ranking now.
Mm-hmm.
All recipes, some of their content has 0 photography. As long as you have your hero image, your featured image in the thumbnail, you're good to go.
Perfect. Um, Okay, a lot of repeat questions. Hold on just a second. Is it a bad idea to put our post recipes into ChatGPT? If we do, does that make it more likely that ChatGPT will offer slash steal our information to other people without reference?
This is a whole different conversation to have because it's there's so much misconception about how LLMs work. You can pay for ChatGPT, you can pay for a different LLM that will not use the information you give it. But I can guarantee you that if your post is publicly facing and you're not blocking LLMs, it has a cache of your content already.
Okay, sounds good. Lindsay wants to know where we're drawing the line between helping our user. A lot of what you're recommending removes our readers' questions and still ranking. Is there a separate place that the other info can go on our site, or are we just getting rid of it completely? You talked about putting it under the recipe card, yes?
So under the recipe card, as long as you're not diluting. So like if under the recipe card, if your entire post is 1,000 words, let's say, but under the recipe card you have 600 words of secondary content, you're going to dilute away from the primary focus of the page. We talk a lot recently in the last year, we've been talking about secondary supporting content. If you have a baking blog and you're very frequently talking about melting butter for your recipes, for your baking recipes, I recommend creating a post that talks about how to properly melt butter for baking and then linking to that post from all of your recipes that require melting butter. So if you find common themes that you're constantly repeating as secondary content within your recipes, create a post and then link to it. And that's more money for you because they're jumping in to see another page.
Perfect. I love it. Jen says, what if we went from 2 to 5 ranking? Do we update it or leave it alone since it's still top 5?
Well, repeat that one more time.
Sorry. What if we went from position 2 to position 5? Do we update it or leave it alone since it's still in top 5?
So it depends.
It
Uh,
depends.
so if it's a high volume query and you're still getting traffic, like if you're like at 100,000 monthlies there, if you're number 5, you're still getting a good amount of traffic. Now, I recommend taking a look at what's happening above you. There's a reason why you lost those positions. Google feels that somebody else is doing a better job at satisfying that intent, matching that intent, and satisfying that query, right? So there is probably some kind of dilution happening. But also keep in mind the human layer, the clicks from people who are visiting that search result page. Now they're clicking on your competitors and they're dwelling there, but they're not doing that with you. You are going to start aging out of those positions. And that's probably why a lot of times you're going to see content in the top 10 spots where you're like, there's no reason for them to be here. They are violating every single SEO 101 rule, but they're still ranking. And that's because they're getting clicks. And Google sees that and Google will keep them there as long as they're keeping the user happy.
Hmm. Okay. Thank you. Marjorie says, I thought that Google ranks recipe card and post separately. And another gal said she'd heard that too. They'd like solid clarification on this.
Right. So the process, because the recipe card has schema, it gets processed differently. There's JSON-LD markup behind the recipe. So the visual part of the recipe card is not, Google doesn't care about that. Like if you look at all recipes, they don't have an actual like recipe card, right? It's the recipe card that you're using is there so that you can generate proper schema markup for that post, proper recipe markup. So Google processes that differently than the actual. So the recipe card, the schema aspect of the recipe card takes the implicit aspect of your page and turns it into explicit. Google doesn't have to spend too much time processing what's on this page, but the rest of the content in the page still has to be processed in an implicit way.
Thank you. Let's see. Can you give one example of perceived helpfulness? That would be a very different one if I said helplessness. Perceived helpfulness.
I need context with that. I don't know what that means.
It was actually earlier on in your presentation when you were talking about some slides, so it might not be relevant now, but she just
Yeah,
wanted some
sorry.
examples of that. So that's okay. Let's go add images in the recipe. Again, you've already answered that one. You said yes, the recipe card. And if you want to still keep them in the body of the post, that's fine, but you need to offer a different perspective. Yes?
It's not so again, I want you to experiment with this. I'm pretty sure, 99.9% sure that if you were to remove your process photography from the body of your post and include it into the recipe card, nothing will change. There will be no harm. There will be no benefit. It's for the user. So I don't recommend using the same photography twice because that's redundant. You don't need to use process photography above the recipe card and in the recipe card. I would choose one or the other.
Okay, perfect. Um, just lots of people's thoughts on the recipe card looking overcrowded with images and all the information and everything.
No,
But
but that's again, look, it's for the user, right? So like ask your users. Ask your user. Again, it's just like your meta description. Meta description is not a ranking factor. It helps you get click-throughs. You should be rewriting that meta description as many times as you want without struggling. Same thing with your process photography. It doesn't matter where it's in the post. It's for the user. It's to help the user. It's to help the user stay on your page. User staying on your page is a signal to Google that your content is helpful. If a user comes to your page and then clicks back to Google and clicks on somebody else, that's a signal to Google that your content is not helpful.
perfect. Someone said food.com is ranking very often with just a recipe without photos. Again, you had clarified that that's because people are clicking on it, correct?
Sorry, one more time.
So
Sorry.
food.com is ranking very often with a recipe with no photos. And this is because, as you said, people are clicking on it. Google will keep them there if people are clicking on it. Maybe explain
Google
a
will
little bit
keep them
about
there.
why.
It's not about length of content. It's never been around length of content. It's about topic coverage. And it's topic coverage. And if you've been listening to us for a while, we say covering the topic in its entirety based on what Google considers that entirety to be, right? So it doesn't for peanut butter jelly sandwich, that could be like 200 words. Ukrainian borscht, that could be 3,000 words, right? It all depends on the topic. So yeah, it's brevity and focus is great, but your process photography is not a ranking factor at all.
Okay. Let's see if there's any others. Sometimes okay, they're just talking about print the recipe card and having pictures on the card might make it feel a little heavy. Okay, is table of contents considered filler?
Mm, sorry, one more time.
Is table of contents considered filler content?
No, but I didn't look into this. I just saw this maybe 2, 3 days ago, so I'm gonna kind of like I don't know, raise my hands on this and say I don't know. They said that John Mueller at one point said that the table of contents confuses Google. I don't know how. I haven't looked into it, but when I checked, I still had clients with table of contents ranking number one.
Okay. All right, we have got to wrap up. One last question from Elizabeth. What about recipe ratings? I personally am far more likely to click a recipe with high rankings, but does Google take that into account?
Um, we don't know. I don't know. There is schema on those ratings, and Google does process that schema. So Google knows what the rating is. And I'm sure there's a way for Google to do that. Nowhere have I seen. So we have experiments. We run experiments on sites that are fairly fresh, not very active recipe blogs that don't have a lot of ratings and are ranking number 2 on Google, number 3 on Google. So I don't think it's a ranking factor. It is a supporting signal because it's helping the user click and trust. Especially if you're getting those star ratings inside of search engine result pages properly, it does help with click-through rates. There's been studies and studies and studies for that.
Okay, perfect. Well, that is everything. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much, Arsen. This has been great, incredibly informative. I think everyone's got so many questions. There's a lot going on. I know personally the March update was difficult for a lot of people. And so everyone's looking for strategies and looking for ways to help their content. And it is hard where Reddit and the AI overview are the first half of page one now, mostly, and that's difficult. So, is there anything else you wanted to say to speak to that?
Um, the evolution of search is happening.
Mhm.
We're seeing already Google is keeping recipe publishers in mind. There was something going around. Again, I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but there's a new AI interface for specifically for recipes. I don't think it's the end of the world. We've been through changes to Google's platform many times. I've been at this since 2009. I've
Mhm.
seen the evolution. I've lived through my business, survived the evolution, and you will survive too. What you have to do is you need to stop being complacent in your process. You need to not romanticize the old way of doing things and really, really try to understand the new ecosystem and environment that you're in. Because if you can't, if you won't, if you're going to continue publishing content the same way you were publishing content, it's not going to rank.
Leslie, you're on this call. I would like for you to make a note right now for Daphne that for this video where we put it out and to on our socials, I want you to take that clip of him saying not romanticize the old ways and focus on the new ecosystem. That is going to be the thing that we need to remember because I think so many people still are doing that.
That's the
So,
thumbnail.
Leslie, that's a little note for you. That was perfect. Thank you. Really good reminder for people that we do have to keep moving forward. So where can our listeners get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your strategies
Uh,
that you shared today?
at TopHatRank, tophatrank.com. Shoot us an email, info@tophatrank. I mean, we're all over, so you should be pretty easy to find. Yeah, we'll make the slides available. All of our information is everywhere.
Mhm. Perfect. And if you're interested in meeting up with Top Hat Rank and Arson in real life, please join us for Tastemaker Conference 2026 at the JW Marriott Live in LA, January 9th and 10th. We're so grateful for the continued support of Top Hat Rank as a returning sponsor, and we know they would love to meet all of you and help your site be the best it can be. And keep your eyes peeled for our next webinar here in Tastemaker Collaborative. We aim to do one free webinar per month so that you can always count on us for education and support wherever you are in your food blogging journey. These are meant to be hands-on, really meaty webinars. And then you can also, for more of a light side of the food blogging community, you can listen to our Tastemaker Talk where we meet with wonderful creators and experts in the field um, monthly as well. So we look forward to seeing you next time. And thanks again, Arson, for joining.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.